an undercover reporter from Al Jazeera's investigative unit who captured a most undiplomatic conversation.
Can I give you some MPs that you suggest you will take down?
Well, you know, if you look hard enough, I'm sure that there is something that we're trying to hide.
Yeah, I have some MPs.
Let's talk about it.
Al Jazeera's investigative unit takes you on 6 months undercover, revealing attempts by the Israeli government to influence British democracy.
No, you know we can be the one the question.
Yeah, it's good to remind me.
Deputy Foreign Minister.
No one who has travelled to Israel and Palestine, as I've done so often, can fail to become emotionally engaged in the rights and wrongs of the arguments between the two.
You know, neutralizing a little bit, no?
Boris, he basically good. Yeah, he just don't care. He's busy with other things. Busy. You know, he's an idiot, but he's so far he became the Minister of Foreign Affairs without any kind of responsibility. So technically, if something will happen, it won't be his fault.
I'm George Galloway, and I want to talk to you about the scandal that has broken as a result of some brilliant undercover investigative journalism by Al Jazeera and published on the front page of the British newspaper The Mail on Sunday. Most of you will know the outline. An Israeli official in charge of political relations with Britain's political parties, a man with a very large bag of money, about which more later, no junior employee. This is a man who is on the conference circuit and is in and out of the British Parliament almost on a daily basis, doing his business for Israel. He was captured on film with some friends from Labour and Conservative, including members of Parliament and high-ranking parliamentary officials, plotting to bring down a British government minister. And not just any minister, Sir Alan Duncan, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Britain. Now, I've known Sir Alan Duncan for more than 30 years. He's a very brave man, not just because he stands out against Israeli crimes against the Palestinian people, but because he was the very first publicly out gay Conservative MP. And so when the Israeli official said that he could arrange a scandal to bring down Alan Duncan from the Foreign Office position that he holds, you don't have to be Einstein to work out what kind of scandal that might have been. That ought to have been enough for Boris Johnson, who was called an idiot in the same piece of footage by the Israeli official, to summon Mark Regev, the Israeli Ambassador to London, and give him his marching orders. He didn't, of course, do that for reasons which we will go into in just a few minutes. But that was not all that was uncovered. The friends at the lunch asked the Israeli official whether there were not other MPs that could meet the same fate, could be brought down in a scandal by this man that they were lunching with. And they came up with a very interesting name. Sir Crispin Blunt, no less, the chairman of the British Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee. They didn't like him either. They wanted to bring him down, to arrange a scandal for him. Now, he too is a publicly out gay Conservative. Again, you don't have to wonder for long what kind of a scandal that might have been. I don't mean to be flippant, but maybe they would have put Alan Duncan and Crispin Blunt together under the bedclothes. Maybe that would have been the ultimate, the mother of all scandals, bringing them both down at the same time. Now, Boris Johnson declared the matter immediately closed. So my first question to you is, if that had been a Russian embassy official or an Iranian embassy official planning to bring down important people in the British state, would the matter have been immediately closed, or would the respective ambassadors be brought into the Foreign Office and promptly expelled from the country? Wouldn't we be now in the middle of a state-to-state crisis with any other state that's carried out such subversion of our democratic process. And that's what I want to turn to next, because these two Tory knights of the Shire can look after themselves. I'm more interested in the Labour Party aspects of this. Jeremy Corbyn and I marched together for more than 30 years in support of the Palestinian people. Since the day and hour that Corbyn was elected, indeed, when it became clear that he was likely to be elected, the Israel lobby has gone absolutely bananas. They persecuted Jeremy Corbyn every step of the way to the leadership, and as soon as he had won it, they began trying to have him overthrown. They confected an entirely fake anti-Semitism scare inside the Labour Party, painting their own party as a nest of racism, when of course the truth was that there was nothing to such allegations whatsoever. The only thing that most Labour Party members have in common with Jeremy Corbyn on this is their support for justice for the Palestinian people and their opposition to the crimes of the State of Israel. Well, there was a Labour MP at the lunch. Her name is Joan Ryan. She's the Member of Parliament for Enfield, though you wouldn't know it. In fact, she's more properly described as the MP for Tel Aviv. She's the chair of the so-called Labour Friends of Israel. And she was there for a very important purpose. And the same Israeli official in charge of political relations with the British political parties gave her some very good news. And in the pictures accompanying the Al Jazeera footage, you can see the breadth of the smile on her face. As well it might, because the official told her that he had secured more than £1 million as a slush fund for Labour members of Parliament to come to the aid of the State of Israel. It's being dressed up as more than £1 million to fly Labour members of Parliament to Israel for fact-finding missions. But that's entirely bogus. First of all, most of them have already been on not one but several fact-finding missions to Israel. Secondly, you can fly to Israel for well under £1,000. And let's say half of the Labour MPs have taken the shekel. That doesn't even cost you £100,000. What was the other £900,000 for? I'll tell you. It was for a slush fund to destabilise Jeremy Corbyn, to try and overthrow Jeremy Corbyn as the leader of the Labour Party. It was for a political slush fund operated by Labour members of Parliament on behalf of a foreign power. Not just any foreign power, but one which is the biggest international lawbreaker on the earth. One which has just been unanimously condemned by the entire Security Council of the United Nations for its criminal activities against the Palestinian people. What kind of Labour MP is not only in bed with a state like that, but is receiving covertly, because you would never have heard of the existence of this slush fund of more than £1 million, taking money from a foreign embassy to lobby for that foreign country when that foreign country stands in public opprobrium amongst almost all Labour Party members, most people in Britain and most countries in the world. And the third aspect I want to deal with is this. It is said in the video by the high-ranking Conservative official at the lunch that almost all Conservative MPs are members of the Conservative Friends of Israel. I can tell you that at least half of the Labour MPs are members of the Labour Friends of Israel. Isn't it about time that you demanded that your Member of Parliament's first allegiance was to Britain that their first responsibility was to debate and decide on what Britain's foreign policy should be, rather than be agents for somebody else's country. And when that somebody else's country is a country of gangsters that murder people, including British people, and for a very long time. The Israel lobby have been in Westminster and Whitehall before, you know. They tried to murder Sir Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister, at a time when he was leading our country in the epic battle against Hitler, fascism, the perpetrators of a Holocaust which murdered 6 million of Jews. They planted bombs in the Foreign Office in Whitehall. They murdered British officials. They hanged 2 British sergeants with piano wire in an orange grove and took pictures of it so that they could spread it as propaganda around the world. They blew up more than 90 British civil servants in a hotel in Jerusalem. Israel invented terrorism. It invented modern terrorism at any rate. Yet now it calls its victims, the Palestinian people, the terrorists, and themselves the victims of terror. Well, we can talk about sorting out the Middle East later on another day. But first, we have to sort out our own parliament and our own democratic system. We must not tolerate its subversion by a foreign power. We cannot tolerate members of parliament being bought and paid for by a foreign power, because we can never know when they say, when they ask, when they do what they do in parliament. We can never know if they're doing it because it's in our interests or it's in the interests of someone else. I haven't seen the Al Jazeera documentary in full yet, but when I do, I'm sure, God willing, I'll have the chance to come and talk to you about it again.
How Israel influences British politics. We reveal from the inside how the Israeli embassy penetrates different levels of British democracy. In the first of 4 programs, the battle for Britain's youth. Following decades of violence, a new challenge has emerged to Israel's occupation of Palestinian lands, called BDS.
BDS is here to stay.
That's the global movement to boycott, divest, and impose sanctions on Israel and expose it as an apartheid state. The Israeli government has responded with a campaign to rebrand the country's image.
The reason we should fight BDS is because it's wrong. It's a moral outrage.
It's an operation run by the secretive Ministry of Strategic Affairs.
They recruit mainly former intelligence officers. Its main task is to counter BDS worldwide.
Using an undercover reporter, Al Jazeera's investigative unit exposes Israel's clandestine activities in London, a city that's become a major battleground.
BDS campaign in many ways germinated in Britain.
You'll meet the people working to challenge BDS at every level of British politics.
Israeli Ambassador.
Ah, okay, nice to meet you.
We work really closely together, but like a lot of it's behind the scenes.
One of Israel's main targets is the Labour Party. For the first time, its leader is a champion of Palestinian civil rights.
They'd be very happy to see Jeremy Corbyn no longer leader of the Labour Party, for sure.
It's a covert action that penetrates the heart of Britain's democracy.
Can you give us some evidence that we suggest you will take down?
It is outrageous interference in British politics. It shouldn't be permitted.
It's a battle of ideas, seeking to change not only how Israel's portrayed, but even how it is debated.
It's anti-Semitic. No, it's not. It's a trend. Our undercover reporter grew up in Germany and creates an identity as a graduate planning to live in Britain. Robin sets himself up in London as an aspiring Labour Party activist with strong sympathies toward Israel.
After over a month of attending party functions, he stood out as a friend of Israel. And before long, he recognized a familiar face.
I'm Robin.
Israeli Ambassador.
Ah, okay, nice to meet you.
My name is Shai.
Shai?
Shai, yeah.
It's a meeting of the Labour Friends of Israel, or LFI, members of the British Parliament who lobby for Israel.
Yeah, take the district. So...
Shai later explained to Robin the problems the LFI is facing.
Not a lot of young people want to be affiliated. Obviously, when they will become MPs, they won't be affiliated, and then that's it. Chain is done. Because for years, every MP that joined the parliament, the first thing that he used to do is going to join LFI. He's not doing it anymore in the Labour Party. CFI, they're doing it automatically. All of the 40 new MPs that just got in the last elections, all of them went to the CFI, Conservative Front of Israel.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the LFI didn't happen, obviously. But you need to get more people on board. It's a lot of work, actually.
Robin tweeted and wrote articles about Israel and the Labour Party, building up his online identity. He discovered numerous groups that support Israel and which identify themselves as independent grassroots movements. One is the Sussex Friends of Israel. They organized a march to protest against the pro-Palestinian movement to boycott Israel. Robin had joined them. Shai later described the embassy's role in some of these movements.
There is a grassroots organization as Sussex Friends of Israel that went to the demonstration. There is a Israel-Britain Alliance. There is a BIPO. There is so many who believe in Israel. There's so many.
Shai had helped establish a youth group within the Conservative Friends of Israel.
They have a young section of the Conservative Friends of
CFI, yeah. CFI started with it 1 year ago because of my idea. And then when I tried to do the same in the Labour, they had a crisis back then with Corbyn. Every group has an idea. Specifically, LFI young people doesn't exist. That's the only place that there is a practice. The moment it will become to 100 people, 200 people, then it started to become a real organization. But just to take a year.
Have you ever built something, like a group?
Yeah, I did several things like that, yeah.
Okay.
In Israel and here.
Here as well?
Yeah. Nothing that I can share, but yeah.
Something you could share?
Yeah, because there are things that, happen, but it's good to leave those organizations independent, but we help them to actually...
To establish.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much.
It was great.
Have a nice evening, right?
Our investigation linked the embassy's senior political officer with a series of pro-Israel groups: the Parliamentary Friends of Israel, Young Conservatives, lobbyists, as well as grassroots movements. In addition, Shai is involved with the youth arm of the Fabian Society, an influential Labour Party think tank.
I know Shai. Shai's a good guy. He's a good friend of mine. When we engaged with the Israel Embassy, they gave us a program that was very neutral. And, I know Shai, I met Shai through the process, and Shai, in himself, he's a very balanced guy. And if you talk to the Israel Embassy, they're not going to barrage you with propaganda.
It appears the Israeli diplomat's mission is to build support for Israel at all levels of the Labour Party.
And there is a lot of groups that are educating the MPs. There's no one that's educating the grassroots of the party. That's it. specifically in the labor.
Yeah.
Everything doesn't need it.
No?
Shai says he knows nearly all the Fabian Society activists.
No more than that. This is 200.
This is all.
This is all in London, like around 200. This is active. It's campaigning, it's active. I know almost all of them. I took a Fabian's group to Israel.
Nice,
Yeah, Martin was in that group and others.
Martin Edebar explains how foreign government support helps the Fabian membership.
Shai's good in terms of manpower, and he's got great contacts on both sides of both in Palestine and in Israel as part of his job and experience. He's a great guy as well. He's very helpful and very supportive as well, and he's very balanced.
I went on one of the trips of the Conservative Friends of Israel to the Middle East. It was brilliantly well arranged, very well looked after. You got fantastic access. You did meet Palestinians. If all you did was rely on that one trip, you would have a very one-sided point of view.
Recently, I saw something on Facebook that, like some really odd thing that, the Israelis weren't giving Palestinians water or something during Ramadan. I know that's false.
According to Haaretz newspaper, Israel, which controls all water sources in the occupied West Bank, did cut supplies, even if the reason was contested.
I've been to Israel, going to the delegation, seeing what the system's actually like. I know that's false, and I know that's propaganda. But you only will understand that if you actually go to the country.
Our undercover reporter discovered that Shai Masot played a role in another key Labour Party organization, the Jewish Labour Movement, or JLM. Robin attended a summer barbecue organized by the JLM. Much of the small talk turned to the Israeli embassy.
Who do you know at the embassy?
Shai?
Oh, you know Shai?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I work with Shai.
Oh, you work with Shai?
I work for the ambassador.
At this moment, I wanted to also kind of formally welcome Ella to her new post as director. Ella was by no means the person on that pile of CVs that had the most Labour Party and political experience. But there was something that we felt on the JLM executive and as trustees mattered far more, which is that she's one of you. She's seen this stuff from the inside. She's fought the campus battles alongside you, which is why we took the step of appointing Ella to this role, because we think she's going to go on and play an incredibly critical role at the lead of the struggle against anti-Semitism in the Labour Party.
Hi guys, so I've been introduced. I'm Ella, I am JLM's barbecuer-in-chief and new director. And let's go out, let's change the Labour Party for the better, and let's hopefully influence the future of this country for the better with a, progressive, strong, fair society.
What came next surprised our undercover reporter. Shai had asked Robin to become part of the Israeli embassy's plan to attract young Labour Party members.
Elephant's Labour Friends of Israel, they want to establish a branch of young Labour Friends of Israel. But the idea is to establish a kind of a branch that will work with young people. So what I'm saying is that if you're a fitter and you would like to get engaged, I guess they're looking for someone that really, launch it and run it. We need to try to think about, so what can you do?
Shai then suggested that as well as setting up the young LFI, Robin apply for a job at the Israeli embassy. He was invited to a private meeting at a London hotel. It included embassy staff and British supporters of Israel. An Israeli diplomat takes Robin to one side.
We're looking for workers, for someone to work at the embassy. I don't know if it's something that might interest you. Shai talked to me about that, actually. So I had it in my CV. That'll be it. That's it, exactly. We're also looking for somebody to work on the whole BDS piece, doing research into the different BDS movements, who they are, what they are, a little bit of strategy on that whole piece. So I don't know if either of those things might appeal to you.
Ella Rose, the new director of the Jewish labor movement, was pleased to hear of Robin's plans to set up a young LFI.
I used to work at the embassy here. I can definitely help you out. Okay. Would love to come to any and every event you're hosting. Please consider me your #1 fan.
The guest of honor, a minister from the Israeli government.
I grew up on the ideology that the land of Israel totally belongs to the Jewish people. Not any compromise, morally, biblically. The land of Israel belongs to the Jewish people.
The primary role of Israel's Strategic Affairs Ministry is to counter the BDS movement.
It is a strategic threat for the future of Israel, because if we will allow them to continue with all the lies that they are spreading against Israel, we will lose this fantastic young generation, and maybe from here there will be the next leaders of the UK or other countries, and they will think that Israel is a very bad country.
During another meeting with the embassy's senior political officer, Shai tutors Robin on setting up a new pro-Israel group.
Basically, the people that affiliate with the Labour Party, but they are young. How do you approach them? So first of all, I think you need something to sell, right? So theoretically, maybe LFI would agree to do a delegation to Israel, and that's always a good start. Second, maybe you need an interesting speaker. That's maybe the embassy can help, or LFI can help. If you are volunteering, to be the chairman of it, you theoretically need to have someone that will do social media, and someone that will take care of speakers or events, or someone that will be the chairman of the delegations to Israel. And then you just, and then people becoming, then you have a structure. Then it's not just your responsibility, under you another 6 people that have a responsibility somehow. And they're the committee of the organization. And that's it. That's the way you establish organization.
Who should I contact, what do you think?
Michael.
Michael?
Rubin.
Michael what?
Rubin. Michael Rubin.
Michael Rubin.
Write to him that you have an idea, you want to take it forward.
What's his position in the LFI?
He's a parliamentarian officer.
I recently started at LFI. I worked for the Labour Party before that. I was chair of Labour Students. I knew Shai in my role at Labour Students. We did a couple of things together. They take advantage of sunshine whilst it lasts. We talked about having a launch event, like drinks receptions, like hiring out, like the upstairs for a pub like this, putting a little bit of money behind the bar to get people there. So we could get some of our parliamentary supporters, so people like Joan Ryan, she could come along and sort of speak, because people are trying to meet her.
And she's in contact with Shai as well, so...
Yes, yeah. We sort of work the ambassadors, we embassy quite a lot, and I sort of speak to Shai most days.
The LFI appears to be looking beyond Labour's present set of MPs.
The Labour Party at the moment is not in a good place, to say the least. There are lots of good young people coming through who are moderate and have good views on Israel. And I think we haven't really paid much attention to those people. People are going to be in Parliament in 10, 15 years' time.
Robin tells him about the Israeli embassy's interest in recruiting him.
And there are sort of job openings available quite frequently. So you should chat to Shai.
He gave an example of how a job at the embassy could further a career in British politics.
Ella Rose. She was president of UJS, which is the Union of Jewish Students, a couple of years ago. She works at the embassy, but she is leaving the embassy to work as the Jewish Labour movement to do staff member.
new guard came in, and they sort of thought at some point, okay, we're going to hire someone to like help with stuff. And then all the anti-Semitism stuff kicked off, and JLM vastly increased its profile, and they thought we should probably hire someone political who actually knows, what they're doing. Before that, I was at the embassy working with Shai.
Around about the same time, the JLM re-emerged under the leadership of Jeremy Newmark, who would later hire Ella Rose as the director of the JLM. The big story was about a young student in Oxford who made allegations that the Labour Party and most of the student left at Oxford was anti-Semitic. He didn't present any evidence at all. The only thing he said was that they had promoted the Israel Apartheid Week, which is a well-known event which takes place on campuses around the world.
The national chairman of Labour students at that time was Michael Rubin.
There were allegations on some of Labour Club. So I did the investigation because I was chair of Labour students. That was Labour students report. But there are some people sort of obviously asking questions about it because that was kind of a first instance of anti-Semitism.
And there was lots of media leaks and talks about how anti-Semitism was being covered up.
British newspapers repeatedly ran stories of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. One of the next targets was Malia Bouattia, the newly elected leader of Britain's National Union of Students.
She described Birmingham as a Zionist outpost because it has a large Jewish society. So it's pretty bad. It's in NUS and student politics in the UK, anti-Israel rhetoric is pretty bad. Zionism is an awful thing. If you were to call yourself a Zionist, you would get ripped apart. They say they're anti-racist, they say they don't discriminate people, but their anti-Zionism goes so far, I would say it becomes anti-Semitism.
With each year of Israel's expanding occupation, support for BDS has spread on college campuses around the world. In Britain, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict defined the 2016 election for the NUS presidency.
Israel, where it exists now, is that problematic to you?
Israel, as it behaves, is problematic to me.
You would feel it would be okay for you to say about yourself that you were anti-Zionist?
Yes, I would.
Bouattia, yeah. So she's really bad, but Robbie Young? Have you heard of Robbie Young? Malia's NUS president, and Robbie is one of the vice presidents. He's a Labour student, and he's really good in Israel. He's been out on a trip, so he's seen Israel and sort of seen it firsthand. He's really pro-Israel. So there are some people in NUS which are quite balanced and good.
Another vice president, Richard Brooks, took the unusual step of publicly claiming that Bouattia's criticisms of Israel amount to anti-Semitism.
We've never had an elected leader who's racist. NUS's internal structures don't usually allow a vice president to go in and publicly criticise your president on national radio, but you've got to do what you've got to do.
When you look at what Malia Bouattia has been saying, she says her criticisms are a political one. She talks about Zionism, not about people who are Jewish.
Yeah, I think the really important thing here, and something that the student movement needs to face up to, is that it is for Jewish students to define what anti-Semitism is. And in the run-up to National Conference, nearly 50 Union of Jewish Student Presidents of Societies made it clear that they had concerns about some of the rhetoric.
Brooks never mentioned that weeks before that interview, he'd been taken to Israel as part of a delegation from the Union of Jewish Students.
I got educated on the stuff, spoke to people in UJS. I got taken on a trip to Israel with UJS about 2 months ago. So that I've learned loads from that. Then from there on in felt confident enough to start talking about some of the stuff more seriously. Obviously Malia is awful. I was at a conference where she got elected. So, yeah. we were campaigning for a person running against her, obviously. We didn't want her to win. But yeah, obviously it didn't work.
During the run-up to the election, Richard Brooks had held private meetings with Russell Langer, the campaign director of the Union of Jewish Students. Also attending the meetings was Michael Rubin.
When he was chair of Labour students last year, I worked with, so it was me, him and Russell from UJS. We'd have our little secret breakfast meetings where we'd plan how to get moderate people, good politics, and a number of things. elected to certain places or whatever. So me and him worked quite closely together last year.
After being introduced by the Israeli embassy as a young LFI volunteer, our undercover reporter explores the possibility of ousting the pro-Palestinian and U.S. president with the help of Richard Brooks.
So how can we get in touch with the people who are trying to oppose her? You speak to me, because I'm helping organise them. Yeah? So, okay, cool. So just drop me a line whenever you want to have a conversation, or if you want to speak to someone in a certain geographical area, I'll point you to the right people.
Our investigation also revealed that the Union of Jewish Students, who sent critics of Mali Abu Atiyah on trips to Israel, has received money from the Israeli embassy.
The Israeli Ambassador Mark Regev gives money to the Union of Jewish Students. Once you're involved in like the Union of Jewish Students, they then connect you. Well, my sister worked for the embassy for a bit. That was her first job. It's a good platform to do for like a year.
In 2016, Shapira launched an unsuccessful bid for the presidency of the Union of Jewish Students. He also received donations from Israel to set up a new campus-based think tank. He established the Pinsker Center with former University College student Elliot Miller.
I spent a year working in the government in Israel. I was doing a fellowship in the Foreign Ministry, the Congressional Affairs Department, so all Congress, part of APAC and stuff. The guy behind me is in Israel. So the kind of guy can walk into a room with a donor and the donor will give them a check for 2.5k. Just like that. He's a genius.
They also confirmed for the first time that the powerful American pro-Israel lobby, AIPAC, is channeling money to British campuses through the Pinsker Center.
I think AIPAC gave some money.
We went to AIPAC in March and we got involved with AIPAC London.
Elliot Miller remains vocal in the cauldron of London student politics.
We kind of set up the Pinsker Centre. Our aim is to reframe the rhetoric on UK campuses. I feel like a lot more needs to be done on the education front, bringing more diverse speakers, move around to the political spectrum on campus, present another narrative.
In episode 2, further evidence of Israel's involvement in Britain's Labour Party.
We work really closely together, but like, a lot of it's behind the scenes.
And the money Israel gives Labour MPs to help improve its image.
It's more than £1 million. It's a lot of money.
Previously, Al Jazeera sent an undercover reporter to expose how the Israel lobby works in Britain.
We still work with the embassy quite a lot.
How the embassy is backing pro-Israel youth groups.
The Israeli Ambassador UK gives money to the Union of Jewish Students.
At the center of events is the Israeli embassy's senior political officer.
It's good to leave those organizations independent, but we help them to actually...
to establish.
Yeah.
In part 2 of The Lobby, our undercover reporter gains even greater access within Britain's pro-Israel community. And along the way, Robin is groomed for a most unexpected mission. Following decades of violence, a new challenge has emerged to Israel's occupation of Palestinian lands, called BDS.
BDS is here to stay.
That's the global movement to boycott, divest, and impose sanctions on Israel and expose it as an apartheid state. The Israeli government has responded with a campaign to rebrand the country's image.
The reason we should fight BDS is because it's wrong. It's a moral outrage.
It's an operation run by the secretive Ministry of Strategic Affairs.
They recruit mainly former intelligence officers. Its main task is to counter BDS worldwide.
Using an undercover reporter, Al Jazeera's investigative unit exposes Israel's clandestine activities in London, a city that's become a major battleground.
BDS campaign in many ways germinated in Britain.
You'll meet the people working to challenge BDS at every level of British politics.
Israeli Ambassador.
Ah, okay, nice to meet you.
We work really closely together, but like a lot of it's behind the scenes.
One of Israel's main targets is the Labour Party. For the first time, its leader is a champion of Palestinian civil rights.
They'd be very happy to see Jeremy Corbyn no longer leader of the Labour Party, for sure.
It's a covert action that penetrates the heart of Britain's democracy.
Can I give you some MPs that we suggest you would take down?
It is outrageous interference in British politics. It shouldn't be permitted.
It's a battle of ideas seeking to change not only how Israel's portrayed, but even how it is debated.
It's anti-Semitic. No, it's not. It's a trend.
Our undercover reporter has held meetings with the senior political officer of the Israeli embassy in London. Shai Masot wants Rabin to help set up a new youth movement allied to Britain's Labour Party. It will soon be time for the party's annual conference, and he's keen that Rabin attends.
So we are going to be there a huge group. From the embassy, we're going to be like about 5 people. And they're going to be an MK from Israel and 8 young Labour from Israel.
He suggests Rabin liaise with the heads of other pro-Israel movements.
So Luke Erkas is the director of We Believe in Israel. He's a great guy.
So you know him?
Of course. So Luke is a great guy. Of course, I know. He's a great friend. We Believe in Israel is sitting together in the offices of but it's not the same organization. He's a great campaigner. He's one of the best in the inside, in all the party. Seriously, there's not a lot of people like him. And Luke asked him if he's keen to.
Can I mention your name towards Luke?
Yeah.
Shai also suggests that Rabin contact Michael Rubin to take forward the idea of attracting pro-Israel young people to Labour.
Drop to Michael an email. And tell him you're keen to do that. I just need your umbrella. And then you need a business card. That's it.
Can I claim that I have your support?
You can tell him that I suggested to contact him, but not my support because LFI is an independent organization. No one likes that someone is managing his organization. It's the first rule in politics.
The embassy helps us quite a lot. When bad news stories come out about Israel, the embassy sends us information so we can sort of counter it, getting it directly from a horse's mouth, as it were. It's quite helpful. We work really closely together. But a lot of it's behind the scenes. We've got to be careful because I think there's some people which would be happy to be involved in a young LFI who wouldn't necessarily be happy if it's seen as an embassy thing. So I think Shai helping with background, yes. So I think definitely keeping Shai up to date and letting him know what we're doing. I think we just have to be careful for it not to be seen as a young Israeli embassy, like we want it to be distinguished by itself. So we do work really, really closely together. So it's just publicly, we sort of try and keep LFI as a separate identity to the embassy because being LFI allows us to reach out to people who want to get involved in the embassy. Keeping it as a separate thing is actually best for everyone because ultimately we've got the same end goal of getting more people to be pro-Israel and understand the conflict. So it's just how you do it.
It's time for members of the Labour Party to travel to their annual conference in Liverpool. Rabin sits with the Israeli delegation. Shai announces plans to establish another organization in Britain, this time with links to AIPAC, America's powerful pro-Israel lobby.
I'm arranging so we're establishing a new group. It's called the City Friends of Israel. And basically we're doing like a small lunch with a congressman from America. I'm doing it with AIPAC.
Our investigation has already established this Israeli diplomat's links to numerous political groups in Britain, including the parliamentary lobby group, the Labour Friends of Israel, or LFI. At the conference, Shai introduces our undercover reporter to LFI members at their stall.
Hi, nice to meet you.
The Israeli diplomat advises the chair of the LFI about Robin's new role within her organization.
So you just met.
Yeah,
Robin is volunteering to LFI as well. Oh, yeah? And he's doing trying to get the young people.
Excellent.
Yeah. He's trying to arrange another investigation, maybe, and that's a young activist of
They discuss paying for influential MPs to take a government-run tour of Israel.
What happened with the names that we put into the embassy, Shai?
And just now got the money. It's more than £1 million. It's a lot of money. And then, and now I got the money. So from Israel. So it's not physical. Yeah, it's improvement. And then,
I didn't think you had it in your bag.
The government of Israel has already budget allocated to various ministries which can use it as they like to bring foreign delegations to Israel. It's part of the information campaign, you may call it propaganda campaign.
The deputy Israeli ambassador to the UK arrives at the stall and is introduced to our undercover reporter.
This is Robin. He's volunteering now in the LFI to bring young people to do young LFI.
And he's a young baby as well.
And young baby as well.
I hope that doesn't mean you're getting rid of us older ones.
Oh, no, it's not older baby. Would you like Oh, sorry.
Shai networked with pro-Israel labor activists. He offered assistance to the Jewish Leadership Council, an influential umbrella group of Jewish organizations in Britain.
And he told me that there is a couple of things that you asked Jill to arrange. So they wrote to, so I did to them a draft schedule.
My understanding is it was just more of an offer from us to them to help facilitate anything they need with some suggestions of what to do. But I don't know anything more than that at this point.
They were amazing. They basically said, Shai, do whatever you want to do.
That's good.
And I love when people do that.
While in Liverpool, Shai's confidence in Robin grows. The Israeli diplomat even goes so far as to introduce him as the chairman of the Young Labour Friends of Israel.
He's Young LFI chairman.
Okay, nice to meet you. We're establishing now the LFI part of the youngsters.
Young LFI.
Yeah, good. And Shai is the head of the delegation.
Hi, Ruben, Karen, nice to meet you.
And he's establishing now Young LFI.
Oh, you're heading up the Young LFI?
Yeah,
Robin learns that pro-Israel activists are planning to attend a meeting organized by the Labour Friends of Palestine and the Middle East, the LFP-ME. On the way, he spots Luke Akehurst, the prominent pro-Israel operative within Labour, who Shai had told Robin to contact.
Excuse me, Mr. Akehurst. Hi, I'm Robin, the guy setting up the Young LFI.
Oh, Robin.
Yeah, he was quite vociferous. Just wanted to, we have like little progress now. We have the first signing up, 22 people on the mailing list. Yeah, excellent. Are you going to any events?
To the LFPME thing? Yes, I am, because I need to take notes on it.
Oh, you're going to write something?
No, just the internal provide.
It becomes clear that as well as Akehurst, other pro-Israel activists will be discreetly recording the event.
There's the Labour Friends of Palestine East 1 and 230, which I'll be going to. So I need to charge my phone up so I can get some more recordings.
Ahead of the Palestine event, one member of the Israeli delegation contemplates wearing a T-shirt promoting Israel.
She's dying for some action. Yes, yes, it's good.
I wouldn't if I were you.
You wouldn't if you were me.
Well, I mean, Akos is going to write a report anyway.
These are our spies.
Oh, right.
Which is why you can't wear that T-shirt, because then everyone...
Yeah, you know, when people shout at you.
Well, you know, I was an intelligence officer, so...
Oh.
For years. I can get the intel for you, no worries.
While the Palestine event passed without incident, controversy did follow a private training session organized by the Jewish labor movement.
My name's Mike Katz. I'm one of the national vice chairs of the Jewish labor movement.
Mike Katz works under Jeremy Newmark, the chairman of the Jewish labor movement. Newmark recently appointed Ella Rose as the JLM's new director.
Of today's session is confronting anti-Semitism and engaging Jewish voters.
The training session was arranged following allegations of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. It became a highly publicized matter for Jeremy Corbyn after an incident involving the former mayor of London.
A Nazi apologist. A Nazi apologist. You're a disgusting Nazi apologist, Livingstone.
A barrister, Shai Masot, launched an inquiry and concluded that despite an occasionally toxic atmosphere, anti-Semitism was not endemic within the party.
Anti-Semitism as a phenomenon across the world. Here's some examples of it. 1992, Buenos Aires, Israeli embassy, 29 killed, 242 injured. 2012, two school attack, 4 killed. Obviously, 2014, shortly after the awful attack in the supermarket in Paris.
The private JLM training session was about to have very public consequences for one attendee.
At the start, it seemed relatively relaxed. It was simply a training session. And I think some of us had gone along there with the idea that it was kind of strange, because in some ways this was going against what Shai Masot had actually advised. So we wanted to see what was going on.
The CSC, the Community Security Trust, they recorded 557 anti-Semitic incidents across the UK in the first 6 months of 2016. That is an 11% increase in the period in 2014. 2014 was the most anti-Semitic year on record.
One member of the audience challenges how the list was drawn up.
I'm wondering if I'm now going on that list, because my MP actually sent a letter to Jeremy Corbyn asking him to borrow money for the Mali and Ramsgate because I was an example of anti-Semitism, because his office enjoyed through my Facebook page and found an article that I'd shared by Norman Finkelstein.
Finkelstein wrote, in what many considered a humorous post, that one way to deal with the occupation of Palestinian land was to move Israel to the United States.
In the past, anti-Semitism was hating Jews for being Jews. Now Israel tries to extend it to say that this is any criticism about what Jews are doing is also anti-Semitism. If you question the right of Israel to be a Jewish state, then you are not different from these classical anti-Semites.
This goes back to the training session. They do this by saying most Jews relate to Israel as being an important part of their identity.
What you need to do is recognise that Israel is an integral part of the vast majority of Jewish communities and identity.
Therefore, if you attack Israel, you are attacking their identity.
You've got to create a welcome debate that is fair. I think you need to be careful with your language and about your references to the Holocaust and what you might say to actually delegitimise that right of Israel, that basic right of Israel as a country to exist. That is not appropriate. Zionism, Zion, not a term of use, and as in any Labour Party appropriate.
Zionism is the political ideology that Israel has the right to exist as an exclusively Jewish homeland in historic Palestine.
I'm Jewish, and I don't agree with the concept of the Jewish state because it gives me the right to live in Israel, whereas a Palestinian who's been displaced has a lesser right than me. So if that's not appropriate, are you really saying it's not appropriate for us to have a political discussion?
The Jews of Europe had the right to look for a safe haven. There's no doubt about it. When they were persecuted by anti-Semitic governments and movements, and definitely the Jews had to save themselves when this anti-Semitism has turned into the Nazi machine of destruction and genocide. The question is, do people who were persecuted in Europe have the right to displace people of another place? Can the abused become an abuser?
You are saying effectively that Zionism, is not open to debate as a concept, then that is really worrying. Anti-Semitism, like any form of racism, is deplorable. And my feeling about how to tackle this is for Jews to be standing boldly and squarely alongside our black comrades, our Muslim comrades, who are much more at the moment the target of racism than people at the moment we are.
As well as our undercover reporter, someone else was secretly recording the debate.
I'm laughing because by the time the row actually broke out, I was on my way home. I mean, none of us thought anything about this training session. I was in the car, and suddenly I started to get these tweets coming through to me and these phone calls from the BBC.
A secretly recorded clip was leaked to a news outlet.
What was actually leaked were certain little segments that would be as controversial as possible.
In terms of Holocaust Day, I would also like to say, wouldn't it be wonderful if Holocaust Day was open to all people who've experienced Holocaust? And if the Jews...
As soon as I spoke, if you like, there was a ripple in the room. And I was just constantly interrupted.
Well, actually, in practice, it's not actually circulated and advertised.
I'm not just Jewish, I am black. And my ancestry is of African enslavement. Only this year, I spoke at Slavery Remembrance Day, and I spoke to a crowd in Trafalgar Square about the African Holocaust, and that is what we call it. You can disagree with me as to whether I should call that a Holocaust, but it's not anti-Semitic for me to call what happened to African people in the diaspora a Holocaust.
And I was seeking for information, and I still haven't heard a definition of anti-Semitism that I can work with.
How it was reported and how it was tweeted was I was basically saying, I can't find anywhere a definition of anti-Semitism to work with. That's total nonsense. I'm an anti-racist trainer. I've been an anti-racist trainer for 40 years. I've been fighting fascists and anti-Semites on the streets for decades.
The incident caused uproar in the British media. The Board of Deputies of British Jews called Walker an unapologetic Jew-baiter. Walker was suspended from the Labour Party pending an investigation. Shortly afterwards, Robin meets the embassy's senior political officer.
What do you think of that woman, Jackie Walker?
Yeah, she's problematic.
What can I do?
Do not let it go.
And report every time she...
Not just all the time.
Yeah.
Do not let it go. That's the key.
In recent years, there is a growing tendency within the government to smear people who are anti-Israeli or anti-Zionist also to be anti-Semite. But not all anti-Israelis and anti-Zionists are anti-Semite. On the contrary,
If they accuse anybody of anti-Semitism, it's basically as bad as kind of accusing somebody of being a paedophile or a murderer, you know, and it's really hard to come back from that.
All right, have a good day.
Meanwhile, our undercover reporter spots Ella Rose across the road. News had broken of Ella's former job at the Israeli embassy, which had not been widely known. She's in tears because of what she considers anti-Semitic harassment.
You're right.
It's been a tough week. Tough week.
Sorry to hear that.
It's all right. Essentially, Electronic Intifada released that I worked at the embassy before JLM, and Jackie Walker's been slamming me online all week, and I just had to stand in front of her. It was really hard. It was really hard. It's over. I'm gonna go run a rally, so you. You. The anti-Semite lot of them.
Oh, my God.
When our undercover reporter next met Ella, she had regained her composure.
I saw Jackie Walker on Saturday and thought, you know what, I can take her. She's like 5'2" and tiny. That's why I can take Jackie Walker. Charles McGrath training. Yeah, I'm not bad. If it came to it, I would win. That's all I really care about.
Oh my gosh. Well, that says it all. I mean, you know, I don't even speak about people like that in that way, that you would take somebody, you would take somebody out. And she's speaking about another Jewish Labour member in this way. I think that's breathtaking. It's absolutely breathtaking. I'm just stunned.
The report that Ella worked at the Israeli embassy had appeared in the Electronic Intifada, a pro-Palestinian news website.
Ella Rose had been working for a year at the Israeli embassy in London, something that wasn't widely known at all, that had been, as far as I could ascertain, had been essentially covered up.
Ah, that's a Winstanley! He was the one that wrote the douchey things about me. He's in bed.
They know they can't win when the debates are open, so they have to do these things behind closed doors. So when I'm outing her as an officer at the Israeli embassy and she didn't want that to be publicly known, yeah, she's not going to like that. She's going to lash out.
Look, at the end of the day, these people are sad, sad tossers. Completely pathetic. And leave them in their corner where they belong. I'm very over them and their existence. As far as I'm concerned, they can go down a hole.
She's worked for the Israeli state. The Israeli state talks about a war against organizations like us. It is a threatening thing to hear about, absolutely.
What we need to have is some investigation of this from the Labour Party, and I will be making a formal complaint against both Ella Rose and the Jewish Labour movement.
Happens. People are going to hate me no matter what, and they're always going to find something. It was all very anti-Semitic, to be honest. I'm a Zionist too, thank God.
In part 3, controversy over anti-Semitism continues at the Labour conference.
You know, classic anti-Semitic.
Yes, it seems.
And a warning from the Israeli ambassador to pro-Israel supporters in Britain.
The fashion is, if you were
on the left today, you are probably very hostile to Israel, if not anti-Semitic.
Previously, Shai Masot advises our undercover reporter on how to set up a pro-Israel movement in Britain.
That's it. That's the way you establish organization.
Tensions remain high after a dispute over anti-Semitism at the Labour conference.
I saw Jackie Walker on Saturday and thought, you know what, I can take her. She's like 5'2" and tiny.
Whoa. Oh my gosh. Well, that says it all.
In part 3 of the lobby, our undercover finds himself at the center of a scandal as he secretly records events described by the media as anti-Semitic acts. For the first time, the other side of the story. Following decades of violence, a new challenge has emerged to Israel's occupation of Palestinian lands, called BDS. BDS is here to stay. That's the global movement to boycott, divest, and impose sanctions on Israel and expose it as an apartheid state. The Israeli government has responded with a campaign to rebrand the country's image.
The reason we should fight BDS is because it's wrong. It's a moral outrage.
It's an operation run by the secretive Ministry of Strategic Affairs.
They recruit mainly former intelligence officers. Its main task is to counter BDS worldwide.
Using an undercover reporter, Al Jazeera's investigative unit exposes Israel's clandestine activities in London, a city that's become a major battleground.
BDS campaign in many ways germinated in Britain.
You'll meet the people working to challenge BDS at every level of British politics.
Israeli Ambassador.
Ah, okay, nice to meet you.
We work really closely together, but like a lot of it's behind the scenes.
One of Israel's main targets is the Labour Party. For the first time, its leader is a champion of Palestinian civil rights.
They'd be very happy to see Jeremy Corbyn no longer leader of the Labour Party, for sure.
It's a covert action that penetrates the heart of Britain's democracy.
Can I give you some MPs that we suggest you would take down?
It is outrageous interference in British politics. It shouldn't be permitted.
It's a battle of ideas seeking to change not only how Israel's portrayed, but even how it is debated.
It's anti-Semitic. No, it's not. It's a trend.
The Labour Party is holding its annual conference in Liverpool. For the first time, the leader of a major British party is an outspoken critic of Israel. The Israeli embassy has sent its senior diplomats to canvass opinion. Our undercover reporter attends a private meeting of sympathetic labor activists. The ambassador, Mark Regev, tells them what to expect.
Some of the people here are more Palestinian than the Palestinians, and the fashion is if you are on the left today, you are probably very hostile to Israel, if not anti-Semitic. I think when you...
Ambassador Regev suggests a message that should be delivered to other Labour Party members.
Why are people who consider themselves progressive in Britain supporting reactionaries like Hamas and Hezbollah? We've got to say, in the language, I think, of social democracy, these people are misogynistic, they are homophobic, right? They are racist, they are anti-Semitic, they are reactionary. I think that's what we need to say. It's an important message.
Jeremy Newmark, the chairman of the Jewish labor movement, reveals how the message worked with a close ally of Jeremy Corbyn.
Just to get Clive Lewis as one of Corbyn's key lieutenants onto an openly Zionist JLM platform took a lot of heavy lifting.
Clive Lewis, MP for Norwich South. Look, it's a real pleasure to have been invited here tonight. I've known Jeremy for over 20 years, since my time working with the Jewish...
Lewis's decision to condemn anti-Semitism at a JLM event was viewed as a tactical victory for the faction inside Labour that opposes Jeremy Corbyn. Corbyn is the party's first openly pro-Palestinian leader. The faction that supports him is called Momentum.
We already have actually intelligence that from the Momentum political directors meeting last night, they passed a vote of censure in Clive Lewis just for coming to our meeting in Sweden.
At the time, Jackie Walker was Momentum's vice chair. She believes that reports of a crisis of anti-Semitism were a consequence of the same ruthless party infighting.
Some of us would say it was mostly a constructed crisis for political ends. I would say there is a crisis of the way that anti-Semitism is being manipulated and being used by certain parts of not just the Labour Party, but other parties and the media to discredit Jeremy Corbyn and a number of his supporters. I mean, let's disagree politically. I'm anti-Zionist, they are pro-Zionist. Let's have that argument. Let's have that argument, not this that's going on at the moment, no.
Everything is wheels within wheels, you know? It's created a bit of division within Momentum.
The day before, I had a debate with Jeremy Newmark. At one point, he turned his back on the audience and whispered to me, "You're a court Jew." Now, anybody who is Jewish understands what that means. If you were being abused as a black person in the same way, you would be being called a house nigger.
Did you report it to anyone in the party?
I told my partner and I told some friends that had happened. It's very hard to use a system which is so discredited, which the compliance unit is.
Shai Masot, whose job at the embassy includes liaising with pro-Israel groups in Britain, ends the meeting with a summary of his achievements.
The numbers, this year we did more than 50 events in the campuses of the universities of the embassy. There are more than 100 events that happened by the Israeli societies, by themselves, that they arrange in the campuses. And in addition to that, we did more than, I think, 8 receptions for young people in the embassy, including 3 receptions of 300 people that came, you know, from the parliament.
I will take a picture. Yeah.
Should I take a picture of it?
Yeah, you can take. We do that,
Cheese.
Back at the LFI stall, Shai and the Israeli delegation continued debating whether to wear the pro-Israel T-shirts.
Shai has a dream. Shai has a dream. I'm going to make it come true today. He wants me to put on the T-shirt. But you know, as Robin is my witness, I was going to put on that T-shirt today. And
I have a dream that an activist will not be ashamed of what he's representing.
I'm not ashamed of what I'm representing. It's a T-shirt, and it's
such a huge message.
I'm a genuine. It's a genuine question. If you say.
One party member was attending her first conference.
I heard there was a Labour Friends of Israel stall, and I thought this would be a really good opportunity to have a dialogue with a group I know who have a lot of influence, and it'd be very interesting to hear their ideas. So I found where their stall was.
Can I just ask you, yes, we're very anti the settlements. What is Labour Friends of Israel doing about that?
We make our view clear, and we meet with people at all levels in Israeli politics and diplomatic circles, etc. And we make it absolutely clear we're not friends of Israel, enemies of Palestine. Hence our new campaign launching next month and that we're showcasing here. We believe in a two-state solution in coexistence and self-determination for both peoples, and that's really important.
How will that come about, do you think?
Well, our job is to support any possible means that can bring it about. So what are we supporting is coexistence project, which is what this is about.
I had no idea, quite honestly, who was behind the stall. There was a woman behind the stall. My first series of questions from memory was simply to say I was very interested to know how a two-state solution would come about. What would be the details, not a slogan, but the details.
What do you like Israeli occupation?
Well, what we want is a two-state solution. And the reason we've not got it now at the moment is because there's a distinct lack of security for Israel.
Supporters of a two-state solution believe that a peace deal based on national boundaries that existed in 1967, before Israel's occupation, will one day lead to a viable Palestinian state. But the continued growth of Israeli settlements on occupied land has made an independent state all but impossible.
If you look at a map of the West Bank and East Jerusalem today, you are looking at a fragmented territory that Israel has colonized now for almost half a century. Practically speaking, a two-state solution is just not possible under these conditions.
I was actually seeking some reassurance that a two-state solution, if that's what they were promoting, was still possible.
This is a big picture situation, and we want a two-state solution that is good for all.
What steps? Because, you know, so the Labour Party is saying...
I'm not going to defend or criticise it.
It seems as if you are defending Israel.
I would defend Israel. I'd defend Israel's right to exist. I'd defend Israel as a democracy and a social sense.
We don't suffer by it.
We have to be very, very careful not to let our feelings about this morph.
So no feelings come into account. I'm not being anti-Zionist.
We have to be very careful. Don't we all want a two-state solution based on coexistence and peace?
I said time and again, I'm here to talk about the two-state solution which you are promoting. And this is what I'd like to learn about.
It's clear that the Israeli state, no matter which party is in power, has got absolutely no desire or inclination to relinquish the territories occupied after 1967. But the questions that throws up are the kinds of questions that people don't want to ask or don't want to answer.
I'm asking you how you are bringing that.
And we make
I don't know what I think.
Anyone who supports Israel has to ask himself or herself the following question. There are two possible scenarios, and only two possible scenarios. Either I support the new state of Israel, which is an ethnic apartheid state, or I support a change of regime in Israel, namely that the state and the country as a whole would go through a genuine process of democratization, as did apartheid South Africa. There is no third option.
Thank you, Jean. I've enjoyed the conversation.
I'm asking you about settlements. They've totally atomised the whole of the West Bank. I'm asking you, I'm really genuinely interested, how is two-state solution, but how can it come about if the whole of the West Bank is atomised? So, but in practical terms,
that's what you're doing.
But I'm asking, in terms of the West Bank is atomised, where will the state be? I mean, that's a genuine question. Where will the state be?
The activist who came to ask her tough questions about the settlements, actually, that was her main point. She didn't ask her about Judaism or the existence of Israel. She just wanted a straight answer. How does anyone who supports Israel justify the settlements?
We go over there, we witness, but nothing changes.
I was quite interested in whatever funds they had and influence they had, how would this bring about a two-state solution? That was my very basic question.
You've got a lot of money, you've got a lot of prestige in the world. I don't know where you get that. Sorry?
Labour friends Israel have got a lot of power, a lot of money.
Well, I think so. I hear that it's a stepping stone to good jobs. A friend of mine's son's got a really good job at Oxford University on the basis of having worked for Labour Friends of Israel.
If you just believe rumours, then
it's not a rumour, it's a fact.
It's anti-Semitic.
No, it's not anti-Semitic.
It's a trend. It's about conspiracy theories.
It's not.
Sorry, it is.
It's not.
Anyway, that's my view, and I think we have to agree to differ.
No, I don't think we do have to agree to differ.
I'm agreeing to differ. I'm ending the conversation because I am not really wishing to engage in a conversation that talks about get involved with this and then you get a good job in Oxford or the city or that is anti-Semitic. Sorry.
But do you think that...
Joan Ryan falsely claimed that Jean referred to jobs in the city, London's financial centre.
And it comes very clearly in the discussions that you have filmed that the woman was not anti-Semitic. They know it. She didn't talk like an anti-Semitic person. She was a typical pro-Palestinian person who was worried about the violations of the Palestinian human and civil rights.
Ryan continued to reference banking, a traditional anti-Semitic trope, as she left the conference hall with our undercover reporter. But Jean had never mentioned it.
And anti-Semitic, you heard her say, join you lot and you get into Oxford or you get into work in a bank or anti-Semitic.
At no point did I ever say that Labour Friends of Israel will get people jobs in banking in the city. I did say, which is absolutely true, that I know the son of a friend of mine who he believed himself that having some connection with Labour Friends of Israel didn't harm his career at all.
That evening, at a rally to combat anti-Semitism organized by the Jewish labor movement, Joan Ryan described her day at the stall.
But we have also had 3 incidents of anti-Semitic harassment on our stand to the people who are staffing that stall today. And that, I think, tells you something about why we need to be having this against anti-Semitism rally.
By the following day, word had spread about Jean's exchange at the LFI stall. Several MPs came by and expressed concern, including Jeremy Corbyn's former challenger, Angela Eagle.
I think we had a couple of problems yesterday, but today's been better, where we did have one person towards the end of the day come and say the anti-Semitism is just being used to crush Jeremy, and that the allegations are sort of made up to a certain extent, which is obviously awful, but compared with stuff yesterday, it's sort of not that as bad. Some of that sort of stuff is now becoming normalised. Sort of less shocked about that than I was about that happened yesterday. I know, tell me about it. How are you anyway? You okay?
I'm absolutely loving it.
As well as Jean's case, other alleged incidents of anti-Semitism involve the attempt to replace the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Another prominent Corbyn opponent arrives at the stall and hugs Jennifer Gerber, the director of the LFI. Labour MP Shukka Umana asked for an update on the anti-Semitic incidents.
What exactly happened?
Oh, God, yeah. Actually,
one Nazi came up and basically said the coup was run by Jews, Jewish MPs and Jewish millionaires. And Angela Eagle's husband is Jewish. No, you couldn't make it up, could you? We reported it.
And so that was incident 1. What were the other 2?
Joan dealt with the other incidents.
Right.
The other incidents yesterday.
I reported that incident, that woman. She took a video of me then. Joan Ryan, Labour Friends of Israel, working away while answering questions.
Sorry.
They didn't show any of the bits where I said, you're being anti-Semitic.
That's obviously come to an end.
So I made formal complaints.
I am very shocked about the way she described my words to other people. I feel very anxious and that she should be misinterpreting me totally to other people. I find that very, very worrying.
But I mean, I wrote down, all this what she was saying about the being rich and powerful, the one who went to Oxford, and the next minute he's got a big job in banking, and I said that, classic anti-Semitic.
I have no idea how she got from A to Z, going from my comment, which was what it was, to then saying he got a big job in banking. Maybe she believes her own trope, if that's the word they use.
We had a woman saying, no, I've never seen this nonsense. And my Jewish friends have. They said, well, it is real. Is it real? Is it really real? It's just been used to crush Corbyn. And I said, as a bit, as a Jew, would you say that to any other, I've experienced homophobia, but I don't deny it. But anyway, it's only a few, I guess. That's the way it's out of it.
People have been positive. We signed up lots of people.
Yeah, do you know what? Most people have been positive and nice. It's kind of like solidarity. People are coming up like solidarity. It's like solidarity, guys. Are you okay? How's your day?
It's disgraceful.
We'll prevail. Yes. We'll prevail in the end.
I like that.
Definitely.
It's in a way pathetic, but it's also worrying how such a pathetic evidence can, and we know, can be used to intimidate Jeremy Corbyn into establishing an inquiry commission, in making daily confessions that he's not anti-Semitic, and so on.
That is, I think, going to be the defining narrative, actually, now, which is anti-Semitism. And do you know what? That denies, you know, what I found, I said to her, you heard me a couple of times saying, I find that upsetting that as a Jew, you're telling me, like, and she didn't give up.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, I think it's, if an anti-Semite comes up, you know, if somebody says to me, Jews, they're all big noses and control the world. I'm like, wow, but you're an anti-Semite, that's terrible. Someone like her worries me more, because is she an anti-Semite? I don't know. But she basically denies the fact that it exists. She just thinks it's made up. And
the group discusses which act of alleged anti-Semitism was worse. Rubin believes that Jean's discussion with Joan Ryan was amongst the most serious.
I know. It's just the stuff yesterday was like explicit anti-Semitism.
Difficult moments, women who told us that anti-Semitism, you know, is being concocted to crush Corbyn. That is what she said. And I think people, like, if we're not getting it out there.
Yeah.
But is that anti-Semitic, guys? I don't know, like...
That's the guy, I don't know where my line is anymore. I think it's different to yesterday.
I think if it makes you feel uncomfortable, I mean, that's the point at which you call it out and report it. And that's why Joan convinced me to report the one yesterday, because I was made to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And although nothing anti-Semitic was said, I'm sure there were undertones of it, and it was brought upon by that context.
I thought Labour Friends of Israel were talking about Palestine because they were promoting a two-state solution. Now I find they don't want to talk about Palestine. And if you do talk about Palestine, it would appear you're kind of sucked into having an accusation of anti-Semitism brought against you.
At the end of the day, if you feel offended by it and uncomfortable for it, this should be a safe space, and anything that breaks that should be reported, I think. There is that line, obviously.
So they're really scratching the bottom of the barrel to make a list of 2.5 cases of anti-Semitism. 2 out of the 3, they themselves are not totally sure that they fall into their own strict definition of anti-Semitism.
Jean was unaware that her exchange with Joan Ryan had made national news and that a complaint of anti-Semitism was lodged.
I felt overwhelmed by being at the conference. I had no idea there would be so many things to go to, so many interesting workshops to go to, seminars at the same time as people speaking in the main hall. My husband hadn't been very well, so we actually left a day early.
Shortly after, Joan Ryan's assistant emailed Robin asking him to be a witness to Jean's alleged act of anti-Semitism.
I kind of feel it was an anti-Semitic, trope against Israel and like Jews controlling and having power and money. I think, although she didn't say Jews and she said Israel, it's definitely on the line. Do you know what I mean? Because if she had said the word Zionist, I would have said 100%, 100%.
Despite being unsure of what he had witnessed, Richardson had no qualms about the expulsion of a fellow Labour Party member.
How it works is, you make the complaint and then the Labour Party within their own rules will decide. I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect this woman might be potentially banned because she did say something that was anti-Semitic.
After Jean had left the conference, she was contacted by a Labour Party investigator. He would only say that it was about a serious incident.
I was thinking, had I seen a fire take place? Had I seen someone throw a bottle? Had I seen a fight break out? I was really racking my brains thinking, what incident had I seen? Was I aware of? Was I a witness to something? And almost by return came an email that it was my conduct that was being investigated. I was totally shocked. That was like a real bombshell.
In part 4, the senior political officer at the Israeli embassy wants a private word with our undercover reporter.
I wanted to speak with you. This is doing actually over a coffee, but yeah, just let's do it on the way to the event.
Okay, whatever you feel like.
There seems to be a problem.
I can give you an idea, but you need to approach them independently. Do you understand?
And when does lobbying become espionage?
Can I give you some MPs that I suggest that you will take down?
Well, you know, if you look hard enough, I'm sure that there is something that they're trying to hide.
It strikes me that this is the sort of job which the intelligence services should do, to have a good look at what's going on.
Previously, Britain's Labour Party is having its annual conference.
People are coming up like solidarity.
In a surprise move, the Israeli embassy's senior political officer introduces our undercover reporter as the chairman of a new spin-off group, the Young Labour Friends of Israel.
He's Young LFI, Chairman.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Oh, you're heading up the Young LFI?
Yeah, he's awesome guy.
A visitor to the LFI stall is caught up in a row over anti-Semitism.
Thank you, Jean. I've enjoyed the conversation.
I'm asking you about settlements.
In this final episode of The Lobby, Shai Masot's activities paint a troubling picture. Few foreign embassies in London are this engaged in Britain's democratic process. And at what point does it cross a line? Following decades of violence, a new challenge has emerged to Israel's occupation of Palestinian lands, called BDS.
BDS is here to stay.
That's the global movement to boycott, divest, and impose sanctions on Israel and expose it as an apartheid state. The Israeli government has responded with a campaign to rebrand the country's image.
The reason we should fight BDS is because it's wrong. It's a moral outrage.
It's an operation run by the secretive Ministry of Strategic Affairs.
They recruit mainly former intelligence officers. Its main task is to counter BDS worldwide.
Using an undercover reporter, Al Jazeera's investigative unit exposes Israel's clandestine activities in London, a city that's become a major battleground.
BDS campaign in many ways germinated in Britain.
You'll meet the people working to challenge BDS at every level of British politics.
Israeli Ambassador.
Ah, okay, nice to meet you.
We work really closely together, but like a lot of it's behind the scenes.
One of Israel's main targets is the Labour Party. For the first time, its leader is a champion of Palestinian civil rights.
They'd be very happy to see Jeremy Corbyn no longer leader of the Labour Party, for sure.
It's a covert action that penetrates the heart of Britain's democracy.
Can I give you some MPs that I suggest that you will take down?
It is outrageous interference in British politics. It shouldn't be permitted.
It's a battle of ideas seeking to change not only how Israel's portrayed, but even how it is debated.
It's anti-Semitic.
No, it's not.
It's a trend.
The annual conference of Britain's opposition Labour Party is continuing in Liverpool, in the north of England. The gathering is important for Israel because for the first time, the party leader is a supporter of the BDS movement. Robin, our undercover reporter, has been with members of the Labour Friends of Israel. Shai Masot had conceived a plan to attract young pro-Israel Britons to the Labour Party, what he called the Young LFI. He promoted Robin as their chairman. Now it seems the Young LFI is about to become operational.
I don't know what
Shai's basically and says they empty out a bit of money, which is good. He's happy to help funding up from events, so I think it's good. So I don't punish it, it's just getting organised off the ground now, really.
By now, our undercover reporter had become a trusted confidant of the Israeli embassy's senior political officer. But suddenly, he wants a private word.
Yeah, I wanted to speak with you. This is doing actually over a coffee, but yeah, just let's do it on the way to the event.
It appears that something has changed.
When I was drunk or whatever, I introduced you like as working with Young LFI. Actually, it's not an official position yet.
Shai had earlier introduced our undercover reporter as the new chairman of the Young LFI.
It was an idea. It's an idea that I cannot implement because I am not a young Labour Friends of Israel or young British guy. It's not relevant to me at all. I am an official. I can give you an idea and I can help you with everything, but I'm not relevant to you at all. Just, you know, I'm a tool for you to help you if you want to do it.
Yeah, sure.
If you decided to get the idea.
So you don't coordinate too much with them, or?
I'm coordinating a lot of things with them, but I'm not their boss. My position is that if you need help with, you know, to connect it to the groups, to bring it to the places, I can do that. But you cannot be affiliated with me, and you cannot, like, use me as someone that said something.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not relevant. I'm not relevant to anything. I'm just working in the embassy.
On the following day, Haaretz newspaper reported on a leaked cable from the Israeli embassy in London. The memo accused an Israeli government ministry, Strategic Affairs, of operating British Jewish organizations in a way that could put them in violation of British law.
The Ministry of Strategic Affairs may use local groups, which are entitled as British civilians to counter BDS. They may be in touch with them, they may instruct them, they may support them, but they would be very, very careful not to violate, as a state, the laws and the sovereignty of other nations.
You cannot say, yeah, Shai said that it's fine that I will volunteer to you, because I'm not the one who, you know, taking the decisions to tell
Okay. I'm sorry if I brought you into trouble.
No, I'm totally fine.
Okay, good.
It's just important that, you know, that's clear. I'm not. So if I'm giving you like an ideas, it's like in friendly ideas. It's in a friend way. It's off the record. It's not something that you can use.
So, but there's, I mean,
if you feel like you like the idea, so you got an idea from a friend to do the LFI, it's fine that I will be that friend, but in the bottom line, it's not that I have a say in that idea.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Do you get it? That's politics.
If you were trying to fool the British people by setting up a front organisation which masquerades or says that it's genuine Friends of Israel, but actually is run from Tel Aviv, that's troubling. Just imagine if there was a great big sort of apparently spontaneous pro-Iranian organisation in Britain, and it turned out that it was run from Tehran or inspired by Tehran. That would be outrageous.
The annual event run by the Labour Friends of Israel was one of the most anticipated at the conference. The party leader always attends. The LFI chairperson kicked off proceedings.
We must campaign flat out against the BDS movement and all those who seek to demonise the state of Israel. To single out uniquely the world's only Jewish state and call for it to be boycotted, that is anti-Semitic, and we should say so loudly.
It's very surprising that people suddenly were talking about fundamental issues of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party once a certain person was elected as the leader.
Ladies and gentlemen, the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn.
That's the only reason people were looking for anti-Semitism. And you know, if you look for something, you will always find it, whether it exists or it doesn't exist.
And I want to thank Joan Ryan, as chair of LFI, for the work that she's done and the way that she represents the organisation.
The sudden onset of anti-Semitic claims led Jeremy Corbyn to publicly engage with Labour's pro-Israeli groups.
The Labour Party is not a home for anti-Semitism in any form. I do not intend to allow it to be. We've produced a report to deal with that. We'll continue proposing in any way.
Kind of live with that for the time being. Yeah. Get us through another year.
In the past, Israel has grown used to unchallenged support from across the British political establishment. That cross-party consensus allowed Israel a free hand, enabling it to build illegal settlements on Palestinian lands.
I'm sure many people are pleased to hear your commitment to the two-state solution and your commitment to fight anti-Semitism wherever it appears, in our party or in the wider society.
In private, Israel has another message. Corbyn and the global BDS movement that he supports threatens the political status quo that has tolerated Israel's occupation of Palestinian lands for half a century.
Corbyn is a leader. One of the things that he doesn't understand or he doesn't get is that at the moment that you get the leadership, you need to drop all of the weirdos, the extremists. It's good that they were your campaigners. You cannot build a government from extremists, and he doesn't want to do that. He wants to stay with all of those weirdos.
Back at her London home, the woman who confronted Joan Ryan over the construction of Jewish-only settlements had received a message. She had become the subject of a formal Labour Party investigation.
The following allegation has been brought against you regarding your conduct at the Labour Party conference 2016.
Thank you, Jane. I've enjoyed the conversation.
I'm asking you about settlements they've told.
When the lady, who I now subsequently learned was Miss Ryan, accused me, the allegations was that I was being anti-Semitic, I was just appalled.
Totally atomised the whole of the West Bank. I'm asking you, I'm really genuinely interested, how a two-state solution...
The complaint alleged that Jean constantly suggested that the LFI had lots of money and power, when in fact she had said once the LFI has money and prestige. Nor did Jean mention a high-paying job.
As a concluding paragraph, his summary says, the above incidents and allegations levelled at me left the complainants feeling victimised, intimidated, and both felt the incident contained what they both described as incidents of anti-Semitism.
I reported that incident.
Have you?
That woman. I made formal complaints.
After several weeks, the investigation cleared her name.
That they should be the ones to feel victimised and intimidated from a member of the public, a member of the Labour Party, approaching a stall where they're purporting to give information and presumably wanting to discuss the two-state solution. I just find that almost, laughable, if it weren't so affecting of me. I know now that it can absolutely impact on people's lives. I am just a regular citizen who is concerned about what is happening in the Middle East, and not to be able to talk about that without being accused of being anti-Semitic, I find deeply worrying. I think that is quite shameful.
Back at the Israeli embassy in London, Shai Masot remained keen to find a role for Robin. He invited our undercover reporter to meet an experienced parliamentary operator, Maria Strazzolo.
You must have arrived 1 second after me.
Oh, yeah.
Both were on time for their meeting. As they waited for Shai to emerge from the embassy, it turns out that Strazzolo has met two of Shai's superiors in Israel.
The one time I was late, actually she's Shai's boss. I met her in Jerusalem when I was there in the summer. The one time I was late, she was on time. Last year, I met her with her boss a couple of times with my then boss, because they wanted to discuss things like, problems with the UK government. I used to work for an MP, a minister, really. Yeah.
Who's that?
Yeah. Robert Halfon.
Halfon?
Yes.
The British civil servant began to educate our undercover reporter on how the Israel lobby works inside Parliament, and especially the Conservative Party.
many of the MPs from your party are in CFI?
Oh, pretty much all of them. When there is the annual lunch, which is just before Christmas, basically the whips almost always make sure the light votes come after the CFI lunch, because it's like all the parties there.
Whips are party loyalists who ensure MPs turn up whenever they are needed to vote.
And the PM.
And the PM, and the Chancellor, and the Foreign Secretary, and everyone.
When we're talking about the construction of British policy towards the Middle East, towards the Palestinians, towards the Israelis, you can't describe that without taking into account the fact that the Israeli government has a very powerful ally in the shape of the conservative Friends of Israel, and that they do brilliant job at getting the Israeli point of view across.
The parliamentary officer described the ease with which the CFI's information was accepted by MPs.
If at least you can get a small group of MPs that you can always rely on when there is something coming to Parliament. And you brief them, you say, you don't have to do anything, we're going to give you the speech, we're going to give you all the information, we're going to do everything for you. Then I think it becomes easier. And from that little group, you might grow and grow and grow. So if you prepare everything for them, it's harder for them to say, oh no, I don't have time. So if they already have the question to table for PMQ, it's hard to say, oh no, I won't do it.
Struzolo boasted about how her efforts once made an immediate impact on the national debate.
I was in Israel with CFI when they had found the 3 kids that had been kidnapped in 2013. And I was on the phone with Rob to convince him to table a question for Prime Minister question time for paying tribute, and also tabling an urgent question to get a statement from the government on the 3 kids.
Mr. Robert Halfon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The world has seen the tragic and brutal murders of 3 Israeli youngsters, most probably by Hamas. Will my honourable friend give the Israeli government every possible support at this time? And does he not agree with me that far from showing restraint, Israel must do everything possible to take out Hamas terrorist networks? And will he give the Israeli government support in this?
I think it's very important that Britain will stand with Israel as it seeks to bring to justice those who are responsible.
By now, the senior political officer at the Israeli embassy had become a trusted confidant of our undercover reporter.
It's quite funky.
Yeah, I like it. Oh, this is...
Yeah, I'd rather go for this one, yeah.
Shai invited Robin to attend a meeting organized in part by the City Friends of Israel, a group he earlier said that he was establishing.
It looks like you got along with the Israelis. You have to
great team.
Israelis. Where did we get along? Yeah, that's amazing how you do that.
Hello, sir. Thank you very much.
Maria Struzolo was also there. Discussion turned to Donald Trump.
So he's an unpredictable person. The only thing that you know you can, I mean, from Israel's perspective of view, you can think that he's like steady in his area is the fact that his daughter is a Jewish. She converted to Judaism.
The meeting had been coordinated with AIPAC, the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, perhaps Washington's most powerful lobby group. It is not widely known that AIPAC has a presence in London.
As a European and somebody who lives in the Western world and enjoys its individual freedoms, I also view, and I hope most of you do as well, I view Israel as the battleground where modernity and Western values meet the forces that want to destroy that way of life.
Focus campaign.
Joe Richards from AIPAC's Wall Street division summed up their operations.
Today, we're a pretty robust organization where we have one single mission, which is to make sure that the United States and Israel remain very close together in the relationship in many different ways. And the way we do that is by relationship building with our 535 members of Congress, 100 in the Senate, 435 in the House.
AIPAC's guests explained to Robin their interest in Britain.
The real strategic goal is to get the UK to behave more like the US than Europe when it comes to Israel. And kind of pull them, tug them into the US sphere.
By this point, Robin was well aware of the Israeli diplomats' close ties with America's pro-Israel lobby.
I went to AIPAC last year because I organized the British delegation to AIPAC. So it was me and the British donors. There is like around 30, 40 from each country. I was sponsoring the CFI Conservative as well, some of them the Labour as well. And we all went together to AIPAC. But the bottom line, we have a donor meeting with the head of strategy in AIPAC, and he met us basically to teach us, give us some ideas to Britain.
Shai then announced another audacious plan involving a front company set up by the Ministry of Strategic Affairs, whose mandate is to fight BDS.
So the Strategic Affairs, they asked me, they are establishing a new company, a new private company that basically will work for the Israeli government. It's like kind of outside company, whatever.
The Ministry of Strategic Affairs has called it a secret war, potentially involving what this prominent Israeli reporter described as dirty tricks.
When I say dirty tricks, they can smear people, activists, BDS activists or others. They can hack their emails in order to collect information about what they are up to. They can, trash people.
It's going to be an office of 20 people, so the position that they suggested to me to do is to be the liaison for the international communities around the world. So it's good sometimes, because it's good to work with AIPAC and the others, the FISM, it's good. It's good. And the last position that I applied for, that there is a slightly chance I will get it, actually, is to be the head of the Foreign Affairs Department of the Intelligence Department in Israel. I'm not a career diplomat. I am political posting, so I came just for one position to assist in political issues that's specific. Sometimes you need someone to take care just of that, to be focused on that. So that's what I do.
At ease and with the trust of his dinner companions, Shai floated the idea of a parliamentary plot.
Can I give you some MPs that I suggest that you will take down?
Well, if you look hard enough, I'm sure that there is something that we're trying to hide.
Yeah, I have some MPs.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. No, she knows which MP the one who's going to answer the question.
Yeah, it's good to remind me.
The Deputy Foreign Minister.
This exchange between the political officer of the Israeli embassy and a parliamentary staffer about taking down, is the phrase used, Alan Duncan, is outrageous. It's shocking. This is clearly a deliberate attempt by a foreign government to interfere in the workings of British democracy and to secure the destruction of the career of a minister in the British government.
We recognized Israel in 1950 when they didn't have any clear borders, they didn't have a capital city, and now it's high time to do the same for Palestine.
You still want to know? Yeah.
No, he's doing a lot of programs.
I thought we had
like a conspiracy.
Neutralize him a little bit, no?
No.
Boris is good.
Boris? He basically good. Yeah, he just don't care. He's busy with other issues. Boris is busy, He's an idiot, but so far he became the Minister of Foreign Affairs without any kind of responsibility. So technically, if something will happen, it won't be his fault.
The parliamentary officer then recalled how Sir Alan Duncan had once confronted her boss, the MP Robert Halfin.
Rob was writing articles, giving interviews, doing everything, asking questions in Parliament about the terrorist salaries.
When he was
terrorist salaries. Yeah, and after a while, Rob was doing a lot of it. Alan Duncan took him, like, I don't remember exactly when it was, but he took him on the side and threatened him and said, if you don't stop this, I'm going to ruin you, I'm going to destroy you, and all of that. And Rob told the whips, and the whips just told him to calm down. Okay. Yeah, you know, never say never.
Never say never. Yeah, but what about the...
Don't tell anyone from the team.
Who would they tell?
I certainly think that she needs to explain what she was doing. We want to know whether any further steps were taken towards getting rid of, taking out Mr. Duncan. I think we need to know a lot more about the background to this, what else was going on to damage the Foreign Office Minister. It strikes me that this is the sort of job which the intelligence services should do, to have a good look at what's going on.
Britain's domestic spy agency, MI5, includes in its definition of espionage seeking to influence decision makers and opinion formers to benefit the interests of a foreign power.